Watershed Group. This is our first in-person Watershed Group meeting in 2 years. And it's the first time ever we've tried to also allow people to Zoom in. So please have patience with us. If there's some sort of delay or something, we're trying to include the Zoom people as well. Zoom people, hopefully you can hear me. Please have patience. We have Rachel and Sierra both doing IT and working Zoom, and Rachel's calling me over.
You just gotta move in a little bit. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you're right next to the screen. Good.
Am I good here? Okay. If you're on Zoom and you have a question, you can put it in chat. If your Zoom is not working, you can email alpinewatershed@gmail.com. So we are really excited to have our fourth and final forum in partnership with the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board. And I can tell from the faces and the hay outside and the hats that thanks to Valerie and Devere and the chamber, we've got some of our ranching friends here. So thank you. Really excited to have you here. We want to start by doing introductions. That's really important for Danny to know who's here. So if you could please say your name and your affiliation. Your affiliation could be your business, you could be a community member, but if you are a community member who's a rancher or a grazer, if you could please just tell us a little bit more so we can place you in Alpine County or with your property. Sierra, you want to go first?
Sure. I am Sierra Riker. I am the AmeriCorps member working with Alpine Watershed Group as the monitoring and outreach specialist.
I'm Danny McClure. I'm an engineer with the Lahontan Water Board.
Devere, Dressler, Hereford Ranch.
Lewis?
Lewis Ames from Markley Bell, myself.
Douglas Freitas, Mission Livestock, and graze on South Tonto Utility District land primarily.
And I'm Teresa Douglas with Mission Livestock.
Ted Border with Borderland Sheep.
Todd Gansberg, Gansberg Ranch.
Jessica Gwerder, I'm with the Natural Resources Conservation Service.
Kent Network, I own some agricultural property in Alpine County.
Tom McCurdy, Mission Livestock.
Jason Reyes, South Powell Public Utility District.
Valerie Gordon, Hereford Ranch.
Jan Sussman. I'm an environmental scientist at the Lahontan Water Board. I work with Dan.
Rachel, popping over to you.
Yes, sorry. I'm Rachel. I'm the watershed coordinator at Alpine Watershed Group.
I'm Fisher. I have the pocket.
David Griffith, Alpine Biomass Collaborative.
Lahontan, Alpine County Board of Supervisors. Rich Booth, former Lahontan Water Board guy.
Carl Washmark, AWT board member.
Oh, I'm Mary Young and community member, Markley Bell.
Community founder, community president.
And I'm going to grab you a chair, Andy.
Thank you.
They're right in that closet.
Oh, there's the closet.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you all very, very much for joining us this evening. Is there anything else housekeeping wise I need to announce or need to do before I turn it over to Danny?
Do you want to do Zoom introductions?
Yes, I want to do Zoom introductions. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I can't see it. Sierra can't see it. So can you please call on people 3 at a time? And when you're called on, if you could unmute in the order and introduce yourself with your name and your affiliation. Oh, is there? Oh, okay. I was gonna say we put them up, but I'll get.
Or we could put them up too if you want.
Okay.
I'm gonna shout and hope everyone can hear me. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with Mo. I know she's not here. So Mo, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, yep, my name is Mo Loden. I'm with the Lahontan Water Board.
And then I apologize, I do not know your name, but under River Ridge Ranch.
Yeah, hello, everybody. This is Gary with River Ridge Ranch. We're in the southern Sierra Nevada, Tulare County. And folks might be interested to know we just released a series of 6 videos on low-tech erosion control on ranches.
Great. And
Excuse me, is there a way we could turn that up?
You know, This is the first time we've tried it. I can repeat what they say, but we don't have an exterior speaker. We're waiting for our county supervisors to approve a complete redo. I'm total box. Okay, yeah. In fact, Todd was telling me that he had his wedding reception 30 years ago, and I said, I bet it hasn't changed much since in this room. Okay, sorry. Next.
Perfect. Kate and Rich.
Unmute.
Unmute.
I was out chasing my puppy here. Yeah, Rich Harvey. I'm the chair of the Watershed Group board, and I want to be rancher. I got some irrigated pasture that we have cattle on summertime, so I'm interested in from many angles. Thank you.
And did everyone hear that, or you want me to repeat names? No, I'm just making sure the audience can hear.
I actually missed the name of the outfit 2 names ago. I was hoping to get that name written down. I could-
Yeah, to Larry, can you please repeat your name?
Yes, Gary Ades, River Ridge Ranch and Institute.
River Ridge Ransom Institute. How do you spell your last name, Gary?
ADEST.
ADEST. Okay, thank you.
And then Gary, if you want to email awg.rachel@gmail.com, I can forward it to people.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I can also.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm seeing now there's 15 participants. So I'm going to call out 3 names in a row. And if you could go in that order, please. All right. So we got Stacy James, and Courtney, Gary, and then Edward James in that order, please.
Stacy James, just community member, property in Alpine Village, and also live in Hungalelti.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Courtney Galleri. I'm the Rangeland Management Specialist for the Carson Ranger District on the Humboldt-Tioga National Forest.
Raise your hand if you want me to repeat anything. How's that sound?
My name.
Courtney Giglieri.
Thank you.
So Ed James with the Carson Water Sub-Conservancy District.
Becky DeForest, we're going to go Steve Harda, and Emma Burke.
This is Becky. Good afternoon. I'm with the Alpine County Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks, Becky.
The name Steve Harda, if you want to introduce yourself.
It's Charlene Carveth, the Agricultural Commissioner.
Agricultural, can you repeat the second part?
Commissioner.
Agricultural Commissioner. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm doing an AmeriCorps position similar to Sierra's, but down in Sonora. Yeah, just was interested in this topic.
Thanks, Emma.
We're gonna go Harold, John Paul Keel, and then Judy. Harold, if you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please. All right, let's go on to John Paul Keel.
John Paul Kyle with State Non-Point Source Pollution Management Grant Program with NDEP, Nevada Division of Environmental Protection.
And Judy.
Is it Judy Wickwire? I think sometimes.
No last name.
Okay. Problem. Oh, Farnsworth was also registered.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I just a longtime resident of Alpine County, live in Markleeville, and I'm interested.
Thank you. That's Judy Farnsworth with Mark.
Thank you.
And then I have Wyatt Faraday.
Hi, I'm Wyatt Faraday. work at the Nevada Division of Water Resources, NDWR, and I'm a water rights specialist.
Thank you,
That
What.
was all the names. If anyone else was missed, please speak up now.
And I apologize for that. Thank you all for your patience so that we all know who's here. And I am going to turn it over to Danny McClure, who's going to give an overview of the West Fork Carson River Vision Project and connect that to the, I'm gonna let you say what you're gonna talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to AWG for setting this up, and thanks to everyone for coming out this evening. It's great to see such a good turnout both here, and thanks to everyone who tuned in online. I'm Danny McClure. I'm an engineer with the Lahontan Water Board. There we go.
Danny, can you speak up just a little bit?
Yes,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Thank you. I'm Danny McClure. I'm an engineer with the Lahontan Water Board. And tonight I'm going to be talking about the West Fork Carson River Vision Project and how that relates to branching for improved water quality in the watershed. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of my presentation. First, I'll provide a little background on who the Lahontan Water Board is, and then I'm going to talk about the West Fork Carson water quality in the West Fork Carson. Then I'm going to talk about ranching and water quality. Then I'm going to talk specifically about the West Fork Carson Vision Plan, and then where we are in the process, and the next steps, and then I'll have some time at the end for questions and discussion. Usually I like to let people chime in. So if there are any like burning questions, we can, but I have kind of a lot to get through, so try to save most of the questions for the end. And I'll also be around afterwards if anyone wants to discuss anything. Next slide, please. So the Lahontan Water, the agency I work for, it's a state of California agency. It's the formal name is the California Regional Water Quality Control Board, Lahontan Region. We usually just go by the Lahontan Water Board. Some people just call us Lahontan. We're one of 9 water boards in the state of California. We're number 6 on this map, so we're most of the eastern portion of the state. Most of it is starting at the crest of the Sierra. And our responsibility is to protect water quality. So we implement both the Federal Clean Water Act as well as the state equivalent in the California Water Code, it's usually called a Porter Cologne. So we have a water quality control plan, or a basin plan, it's sometimes called, for the region that has the region's water quality standards as well as a program of implementation to attain those standards. We regulate discharges to both surface water and groundwater, and we also monitor and assess water quality, and we also implement grants and coordination with agencies and stakeholders to protect and improve water quality. Next slide, please. So one of the things we implement, and this is the program I largely work in, is the Clean Water Act Section 303D. And under that program, states maintain what's called a 303D list, which is a list of water bodies that are not meeting the water quality standards. These are surface water bodies. And it's updated about every 6 years. And so for those water bodies that aren't meeting standards, then what's called a TMDL is required. That's a total maximum daily load. It basically is a determination of the how much of a pollutant a water body can still have discharged to it and still be meeting standards. So that then that is allocated among the sources and then that's usually established in the basin plan and with the implementation requirements for all the controllable sources. But that's usually developed with a extensive public process. It takes usually several years to develop those. And in 2013, EPA released a vision for the implementing Section 303D of the Clean Water Act. This is called the long-term vision. for assessment, restoration, protection under Clean Water Act Section 303D. This was not a new rule or regulation, but it established goals for prioritizing.
What do you think of standing about here, and then you could look back if you need to?
The only thing is that that screws up the camera a little bit because the camera's catching me. Thank you.
But if
That
you
would have
can
been
speak
good.
a little bit.
Really?
louder.
Okay, okay. I feel like I'm projecting, but I can. Thank you. So it has goals for prioritizing, assessing, I guess because I'm facing this way, right? And protection, and also TMD alternatives and integration and engagement. So a couple key goals are it established protection priorities and approaches for the states to establish those protection priorities, and also a goal for using TMDL alternatives where those can better meet our water quality goals. Next slide, please. So states under this vision states were asked to identify priority watersheds and water bodies by 2015 and complete projects by 2022. And so the Lahontan Water Board under vision projects has selected two priorities, one for Bishop Creek and one for the West Fork Carson River. Both of these are TMDL alternatives. And so, so we're going to attempt to do alternatives to TMDL development, but they'll also include some adaptive management to see how well that approach is working. Next slide, please. So I unfortunately don't have time to talk about all the good things about the West Fork Carson, but these are the kind of some of the water quality issues we have. So these are listed on the 303D list, water quality impairments. Explaining this this figure, you've got Highway 88 and 89 in the state line, just to get everyone oriented. And then we have the three segments starting in the bottom left. That's the southwest corner and the headwaters. So we've got three segments of the West Fork Carson in the different colors. And then those black dots are water quality monitoring stations. And we use the data from those stations to assess water quality. Okay, and so the first segment is from the headwaters down to Hope Valley. It's actually down to like the east end of Hope Valley, just past Pickett's Junction, where 88 and 89 come together. And there we have impairments for nitrogen. These are just different forms of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfates. The next segment starts basically at Pickett's Junction and goes down to Woodford's. And there we have also nitrogen, phosphorus, but we also, and sulfates, then addition of chloride and total dissolved solids, salts, and also turbidity. Then the final segment is from Woodford's to the state line. And there we have indicator bacteria, iron, nitrogen, sulfates, total dissolved solids, salts, and turbidity. I should mention this indicator bacteria impairment that may actually not be above standards if we update our bacteria standard. So looking at it from the old standard that's currently on the books in our basin plan, it's impaired, but if we look at it with the new standards, may not be an impairment anymore, but it's still, a potential issue. There's some elevated levels in the watershed, but I just wanted to full disclosure on that one. So those are the impairments that we're looking to address with this vision plan. Next slide, please. And just to make sure this is perfectly clear, we're not just looking at ranching. There's a number of potential sources that we've identified and are looking at, including historical activities, degradation in the watershed from logging, grazing, and just channel degradation, all sorts of historical impacts to the watershed. Roads and road maintenance are a major source, or can be a major source. Septic tanks, grazing, also recreational activities, hydrologic modification, and then especially looking into the potential future sources such as climate change and fire. So and all these can impact mostly through runoff. non-point sources as the runoff from these activities enters the river to contribute to those impairments. Next slide. So now getting up to the focus on ranching and water quality. First off, we want to recognize the Lahontan Water Board recognizes the environmental benefits of rangeland, especially, habitat, open space. So those are going to be, continued consideration as we move forward on this. But there are some potential impacts of grazing, such as erosion, where sediment can affect water quality and habitat. There could be incision of stream channels, and erosion can happen either directly or indirectly through hydrologic modification, such things as compacting and loss of vegetation. And there's also potential riparian zone damage through loss of vegetation and increased temperatures. And then there can be increases in nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus. And when those enter as water bodies, then those can result in increases in algal growth that can have negative impacts. And then microbes, which also can increase the risk of illness in humans. So all of these impacts can also come from other sources, but they're important because they can impact the beneficial uses of the water, including the habitat and other uses of the water, like recreation. Next slide. So there are lots of practices known to reduce impacts. These involve such things as reducing the livestock within stream corridors, structure landscaping improvements, and rangeland management and erosion control. We'll hear from people who know more about that when NRCS comes up. But many of these practices can also be beneficial to the health of rangelands by slowing down the flow, keeping the forage more well hydrated. And there's also grant funding and technical assistance available from NRCS, UC Cooperative Extension, also US EPA. And really want to emphasize, that the practices for a particular piece of land are very site specific. So, you people who own the land are more likely to know what the potential issues are and what would work best on that site. And so the Lahontan Water Board's approach varies with different watershed specific factors. So, some watersheds were like, for instance, for some water bodies where we've seen some more severe impacts, there's a little bit more of a regulatory approach. And, so it really varies. There is just tomorrow morning at our board hearing, they're going to be talking about the Ridgeport waiver. But they have made a lot of progress there in improving water. Next slide. So why was this West Fort Carson selected as a vision project? First of all, we have a robust data set. We've got a lot of public and stakeholder involvement. There's a lot of restoration projects that are planned or underway or have been completed. And then there's also a lot of work been done, particularly by Carson Water Subconservancy District, where they've got an adaptive stewardship plan. And we really see the vision plan as a complement to that, a companion plan that adds some specifics for the West Fort Carson and the state of California. And so because of a lot of these factors, this was appropriate for us to try a TMDL alternative approach where we're likely to be able to attain standards without having to go through developing TMDL. We also, the plan will include a 9-element watershed plan, so meet those requirements, and that's having that in place will make the watershed eligible for Clean Water Act Section 319 grant funding. Next slide, please. So here are the elements of of a watershed plan under EPA. And it's basically, you've got to identify the sources of pollution, estimate how much reductions are needed, and describing what measures should be implemented to achieve that, how much assistance is needed, and a schedule and monitoring and milestones to kind of assess progress. So I'm not going to go through all these in detail, but that's just kind of the general idea. Hopefully that makes sense. Next slide, please. So here's kind of really what we want to emphasize today. What the vision was for ranching in the West Fork Carson, and what kind of the ask is that they're ranchers in West Fork Carson look at their land from a water quality perspective. How the land use, the grazing and irrigation practices could be impacting water quality, and develop plans and implement practices to address any potential water quality impacts. And that can be done. There's a lot of assistance available from resource specialists such as NRCS, cooperative extension, and the watershed groups we have. And then hopefully be able to pursue grant funding to implement those. We're going to hear about some of that later. Next slide. So, and then backing up to the kind of whole vision project, what the Lahontan board will be doing to implement this will be, once again, it's not just focused on grazing. We'll be looking at all the controllable factors and implementing this plan through our existing programs. And we're going to continue to engage with the groups working on this, and coordinating with various agencies and groups, and then providing technical assistance where needed. We're going to support grants for the projects and practices that are identified. And then there'll be a schedule of milestones for where we'll be monitoring and assessing the implementation progress. And then that'll be used to inform our adaptive management, as if the approach is working or if there's any adjustments that need to be made. Next slide. So just a little history on the development of this. This was identified as a priority in 2015. Did a lot of groundwork and outreach in 2017 to 2020. And we've had 3 previous forums AWG has hosted. We really tried to get the conversation going on how to address the water quality impacts from these different factors, roads, and then we talked about restoration projects, and we talked about impacts from recreation, and then this is the final one on grazing. And those previous forums are all available online at Alpine Watershed Group's website if you want to watch them. Next slide. So next steps for the vision plan, we're going to be continuing to develop it through May in coordination with stakeholder groups and agencies, everyone if you get in touch with to contribute. Also, there's looks like there's going to be a ranch tour planned for like June, sometime after Memorial Day, where we can get out and see some of these, and hopefully provide an opportunity for some next steps for some of the ranching community. There will be a public review of the draft vision plan. I plan to release it around May, and really would like to hear from as many people as possible, because the idea is not for this plan to be a book on a shelf, but for it to actually happen. So the more we can hear back from people about how realistic and what makes sense and what doesn't, really want to hear from everyone on that. And then after we get everyone's feedback, try to incorporate everything we can. We'll bring it to the Lahontan Water Board in September 2022, and then after that, the Lahontan Water Board will submit it to US EPA. So here's the contact information that'll be on the slides, and then a couple. And then also, I don't know if you saw, this was attached to the agenda, but there's a story map that has the different segments and the impairments and some mapping we have to look at. And here's the Alpine Watershed Group's website where they have the previous forums posted, as well as, you know, there's a lot more information about the restoration projects that have happened. Next slide. So, that brings me to the end of my formal presentation, but I think we still have a few minutes.
We still have 8 minutes.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. Sorry if I went too fast. I was trying to get through that. Discussion and comments. Yes.
Yeah, Danny, have you heard on Zoom? Or did you repeat? Okay.
It's popping up, so I can hear.
Okay. When you had that slide on the potential sources, you know, grazing, the recreation uses and all those, does Lahontan have any idea yet as to which one of those are the biggest source, which one is the smallest source?
We haven't. I'd say we have some idea, but I'm not really prepared to speak to that right now. I think, but you can look. Yeah, I think they're all potentially relevant.
Not to put you on the spot, but I was trying to put you on the spot.
No, that was a good question, but
Yes.
definitely, you know, I mean, it was kind of surprising seeing to me like recreation, but you know, because up in the upper watershed, you don't really have a lot of grazing, so there's clearly some other factors. And so, yeah, the recreation, the septic tanks potentially, you know, we're going to be looking into that in more detail, and you know, and ranching and roads also. So those are kind of the 4 big ones. Yes.
So we graze in the Napa River watershed, and I'm part of the Napa River grazing labor over there for that water area, or water board.
Yeah.
The bay, whatever it is, Central Valley, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's the San Francisco.
San Francisco
region,
Bay
yeah.
Regional Board. In regards to the pathogen identification, one of the things, so that was looked into, and it was thought to be cattle. Yes, it is some cattle, but when they identified the pathogens, it was found like in that region, it was feral hogs and human defecation in the streams.
Yeah.
And that was from vineyard workers using the restroom on the outside edges of the borderlands of vineyards.
Interesting.
And so that's what was experienced there. And my question next was, that was a good question. And then my next question was, how long is the assessment of where you establish the milestones, then you assess, and then how things are going before you get to the adaptive management scenario? And when you get to that adaptive management scenario, is that going to be a grazing waiver if there's still a problem, or how do we move forward?
I will defer to my supervisor, Dan, for that.
Hi, I'll try to make Dan Sussman, senior environmental scientist with the Lahontan Water Board. Thanks, Danny. Sure, I'll try to get on camera. I'll try to answer that, but I might have to ask you to repeat parts of it.
Absolutely.
So the process right now is just setting up a plan, right? So here's our path forward, right? And you know, this is at this point we're looking at it as not a TMDL, right? TMDLs usually focus on like everything goes into permit, and and have some of the same things in terms of milestones, but a little bit more strict in how it's managed. And you know, we have a sort of sister project right now down in Bishop, and so that's maybe a little bit further along, and so I'm going to use that as a bit of a model there. And so what we're doing there and what we're hoping to do here, although that one right now is a little bit more focused on grazing, whereas this one is focused, you know, on all sorts of things about the watershed, is to get communication with folks so that they have buy-in, right? And as Danny said, point to different, other implementation measures, and really be able to put those tools that folks want to do and have the landowners themselves give us the information of, hey, here's what makes sense for my particular landscape, because you know everyone's landscape or land is different than their neighbors, and also say, hey, in my ideal world as a landowner, if I'm trying to implement these things, I want to do so and this is the priority that I'm going to give to the different measures and grazing that, whether that means actually like changes in the management of the herd or the feeding or the watering of the animals or actual like physical fencing and, protection of tailwater return and that sort of stuff. So that we have an idea of what their goal is. And then we will be able to, our plan there is, and I think here probably as well, will be to check in, along the way, for the first couple of years, our plan there is to not really have to have too much, direct communication in terms of like, we're going to go out and we'd love for you to take us out and show us what you're doing, right? Because it takes time, obviously, to make these plans, to get the money and all that thing. So after a few years, really just kind of check in and say like, how's everything going? And how's everything going on two different fronts, right? One is, how's everything going with your, actually securing funds and putting in things. And then on the other hand, how's that affecting the water quality? And so the goal is after 5 years to take a look at how things are going and what all the landowners are feeling about it as well. And if everything's going swimmingly, well, we're on the right path, right? Let's keep going. If not, then let's have conversations about, what can be done. And in some cases, the water quality might not be responding to what's being put in. And if that's the case, then maybe that source is not the, is not the cause or not the primary cause. And then the goal is, after 10 years or so, that there's progress, we're moving on the right path. If that doesn't happen, EPA tells us, of course, that, hey, vision projects, they're just kicking the can down the road. You guys will need to do a TMDL eventually if they don't work. That's not our goal. There's also a statewide non-point source program that is coming out with guidelines, and I think that part of that is we're supposed to, at least if there's like irrigated pasture, to develop some sort of permits, but right now that is not our number one. We have our hands full with a lot of other stuff, and if we can, achieve our water quality goals without going there, then that's really our goal. So I talk a lot. I'm sorry for that. That's about a 10-year timeline, but a couple of check-ins
the whole way.
Yeah,
and I kind of hear you there. And maybe also the fecal matter or sort of standards in regards to fecal matter, I guess, and bacteria may have changed as well.
Yeah. So as you notice, with the Westport, Carson, Watershed, there's multiple pollutants that we're looking at. The listing for indicator bacteria is only on the downstream from Woodford's Bridge on down to the state line. That indicator bacteria listing is actually only an exceedance of our current region-wide standard, which is the strictest in the state. And there's a statewide standard as well that applies to almost all surface waters, right? We're not exceeding that here in the Westport Carson. And to answer your question, sir, we currently have a project to evaluate our region-wide objective with a recommendation that is removed. And on Thursday, there's an update to our board actually about that. And so if that goes through, then this listing would go away for indicator bacteria.
Thank you. I noticed in your data set in regards to indicator bacteria, there were some extreme outliers. And I wasn't able to see, I could see the year, but it wouldn't show, the months. Could there ever be more detail involving that with those dates that you took those samples of analysis of this water?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but that is easy to have one of my staff query.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting, given this area, people graze very seasonally. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'm sure the irrigation practices are pretty seasonal as well, would be my guess. I defer to all of you.
Thank you.
I'd be curious, I know there's some Nevada people on the phone. I'm just wondering what, coordination is happening down the state line, across the state line with this, because, it's one thing to address the river system to the state line, but it also seems like it's sort of a lost cause if goes across the border and things are being not addressed at that point.
Are you asking?
But is there a coordination with that, and is that part of the plan?
We
or-
don't have the best coordination. Our management meets with their management, 1 to 4 times a year. It's usually closer to 1 or 2. Our responsibility for our agency is to deliver water at the state line that meets their water quality standards. But beyond that, it's actually been a little bit of time. They actually, I know that NDEP, that Division of Environmental Protection, a lot of their monitoring sites are actually similar to ours. Like they'll cross over and take a sample at the Painesville Bridge, I believe. They have better access at the state line, which is on private land, than we do. In some of our other waters that cross over, whether it's the Walker or the Truckee, it's funny to have the conversations with them and be like, oh, we just missed you. We're sampling at the same site, but I don't know the full answer. Maybe someone on the phone could.
I'm sorry for stopping, but we are going to have to move on just to stay on the topic, but we will have time at the end for more conversation. So there is a question online too, but I would really like to move on to the next presentation if you guys are ready to go.
Yeah, let me, if I could just, in response to your question, I mean, part of what we're going to have in the plan is some kind of timeline. So, there's a balance between, what's reasonable and being overly aggressive or kicking the can down the road so far. People don't, it's not on the radar. So we're really going to try to. That'll be something that we'll look to you all to hear about what's reasonable.
Real quick, is this more of a problem when there's low flow in the river? Because we always joke like solution. Sure. Is that something or?
For a lot of these parameters, you'd expect them to see them looking worse, especially things like something. It's I could talk too long on that. I'm already over the top.
As it sits, the sun kills bacteria.
That's right.
Right. So that, yeah, sometimes it's the opposite way.
If you have a lot of flow going into the river from storm events, like the worst case is a big storm event into a really dry river, because then you're really dominating.
I was just curious also thinking about, non-engineered septic systems next to the river and maybe just being a constant trickle.
Yeah, so things that, improve the hydrology would be a big part of this. And real quick, Valerie, we are going to be reaching out to Indy, and we already have a little bit, but that I think is so. Thanks.
And just as we're switching slides, the slides will be available, and we will have a recording of this meeting up on YouTube, so you will get a follow-up email when that's all available.
And I neglected at the beginning to give the overview and to tell everyone that there were agendas up here. So that schedule that Rachel's talking about. So next we have Valerie Gordon and Devere Dressler. Our idea was have Danny give an overview of the Vision project, but then hear about some projects that they've actually done at Hereford that are kind of specific, identifying issues and solving them. And then finally, Jessica Gwerder with NRCS, as Danny mentioned, will talk. And then we'll have a little more time for questions and discussions at the end. So Valerie, Devere.
Okay, so I will say that I have asked Devere to promise to shower before he goes in the river, and I think that's going to affect water quality significantly. So I would just like to see some data sets on this, and we'll see before and after. So we acquired the Hereford Ranch a few years ago from a rancher who had much bigger holdings than that, and had kind of let some things go. There was a lot of deferred maintenance, and so when we came on board, we started doing lots of infrastructure work, some ditch work, some corral work, some fencing, and we were kind of going gung-ho on this. And do you want to put up some slides and sort of see what happens here? Oh, thank you. Perfect. And then all of a sudden AWG came by and said, hey, we've got some money for this. Can we help you out? And I mean, it was like, Girl Scout cookies on steroids coming. And they helped us with a ton of projects. that we really wanted to do, but wouldn't have been able to do without their financial support. And it's interesting because from their perspective, they really felt like they were coming in and improving water quality. But from our perspective, they were helping us with rangeland management, with cattle movement, and overall better range and ranch quality. And it was a win-win for all of us. So do you want to speak, Dee, to some of this work that was done here? And we apologize for the terrible slides. We're kind of out there doing the work and not really photo documenting it. So, believe it or not,
I promise I wouldn't talk.
so these both say post-project, but do you want to speak a little bit about this?
This is a riparian fence that they helped us put along on the east side of the river. Our home places on the west side. It's kind of, I call that the west, but it's more south. But this is one of the projects that we did. Riparian to keep livestock off the river. We do have some
I
cutouts.
think that's going to show up in a second.
Yeah.
But I kind of like to know, is that south or west? Because we're all confused about that.
It's on the other side of the river.
So another example of fencing. So it just goes to show that we've got fencing here, no river in sight, and yet this fencing was very helpful to us, and it was helpful to cattle management, which impacted water quality positively. We hope if we could see what else is next. Okay, this is a great one. So the bridge. You want to talk about the bridge?
Yeah, before the bridge has been there for many years. The deck was in bad disrepair, so we had a hell of a time trying to get cattle across the bridges. When it's trying to get cattle to go across any kind of a structure across the waterway is very difficult. So we took them across the river, and my wife, being the environmentalist of the group, decided that that's not a good idea. So we repaired the deck on the bridge. We actually put some blinders low here. There they are. Okay. Near side, far side, so that the cattle couldn't see the ledges because their depth perception is really bad. So they now use this bridge just as easily as any one of us could walk across. But that was one of the projects. Another riparian fence here.
And so the plan here was to create a soft surface. So underneath it's all metal, and then we put in shavings here, and then some pavers to drive on, and it's held up really pretty well. We have a few broken pavers, so there's always additional maintenance, but it's been fantastic.
We throw those in the river to replace them with new ones.
Can we cut that out of it? Who let him in here? Okay, here's the water gap.
This is that water gap there from different perspectives, but that is one of the water gaps. This is how high we like to see the river all the time.
We want to know, is this on the south side?
It's on the other side.
The other side.
I told
Okay,
you.
yeah, we're
See,
all very
this is on one side, that's the other side.
Okay, good. So anyway, it just shows this is, so in places where we had riparian fencing, where you say, well, I have no other alternative to water or animals, we were able to put in these little gaps where they could get in, and they've held up. Ah, here's a good one.
Here's the road.
No, it's not. So this is a ditch line that, believe it or not, for those of you who know Alpine County well, this all looks familiar, but this ditch actually originates from water right about there.
It's the snowshoe too.
And it snakes around the side of the hill, and we could not get water through it because part of it had, sloughed off the hill, and there were fissures in the rocks. It was really pretty. It was not in functioning order, and by missing that ditch, we were not able to irrigate a whole section of the ranch. And it was actually Todd, your dad, who said, you gotta get that thing fixed. And I was like, that's never gonna happen. And then AWG came around and said, we'll help you pay for that. And next thing you know, yep. Next thing you know, we had Crockett and his team up there. I mean, it was dramatic. It doesn't look that dramatic, but when you drive around and you see this thing, they were out there with these big machines just hanging on the side of the hill. And we were able to pipe some of it, some of the ditch, and then some of it's still open. But now we can get, you know, water to the upper ranch. And it is a lifesaver because we can get water there in May and before irrigation with South Tahoe starts happening, and it really gets a jump start on those fields up there. And it has been a game changer. And you can say that doesn't directly affect the watershed. Why would Lahontan and AWG care about this? They would care about this because it meant we could get cattle off of the lower ranch where they otherwise would have had to have been, and we could get them and off that lower part to the upper ranch because we could get water there. So there are a lot of really creative ways, and I'm afraid that Shane Fryer isn't online tonight, but Shane was really fantastic in helping us identify ways that our operation could be fixed that would also help water quality. Okay. You want to go?
I don't know what that is.
So helpful. Ted, do you want to come up here and help him out here?
Please
So,
do.
no, okay.
This are some of the trees on the upper ranch. The upper ranch is called Wade Valley for those of you that may know where that is. Some of you that don't, it's off the Diamond Valley Road. That was a project that they helped us do. And then there was always kind of a storage pond up there. We just made it a little bit larger to store more water for irrigation and for offsite cattle so they could drink water. And then this is, you can tell.
So really what this was before AWG came on board with their funding was, you know, a dry area. You know, it was basically a mud hole where we, you know, were able to fill up with water every now and then. And we said, hey, this is a missed opportunity. We could really turn this into a wetland. And these photos don't really do it justice, but we were able to kind of configure the tank a little bit more so that it meandered a little bit more, and then do some plantings around there and plant some trees, create some windbreaks, some mounds to create some windbreaks. Ultimately, right now it's all fenced off to keep you know, cattle, you know, from rubbing and eating the young trees. But pretty soon, this is going to become a really nice sheltering spot because otherwise there really are no trees, with the exception, you know, of the trees,
Shaded area.
shaded area. Yeah. And it's pretty amazing how birds just flock there, and it's a tremendous resource now. It's really quite lovely. And again, that was something that totally helped us out from the cattle perspective. But also as a benefit for AWG.
They also helped us with this road that goes from the lower ranch, which is on the other side of the river, to the Wade Valley's on the other side of this hill. So they helped with this. This road was eroded and in pretty disrepair. Whenever there was a rainstorm, that washed down through. The idea was to keep that sediment from going into the river.
And we also have a ditch line that goes this way. And so every time the water would, you know, the road would wash out, you know, we were clogging our ditches. And so by getting that road repaired, it solved a lot of issues. And this is the pre-project of, that's what that treat area looked like prior over there. And you can see it was really pretty barren. And then,
Just before the trees are.
yep. And so then we contoured it. This was the one tree that was there. And then we kind of contoured it. You're seeing it empty there, but it ultimately fills up. And now that's the mound that has trees on it. Okay.
And we do grow grass.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is, this was really, we feel kind of, I don't know, I feel really lucky that AWG came and helped us with this. It was literally all of the stuff that we wanted to do, and they helped us pay for it. So that was fantastic. There's still a lot more that we would like to do. And we just participated in a Healthy Soils grant, which Andy and Simon have also participated in. And we've all gotten the money, right? So we would like to do more work with planting some hedgerows for some wind erosion protection. And there are a few other things. Andy, are you doing seeding?
Yeah.
Seeding. And Simon, what are you doing?
Seeding and hedgerows.
Seeding and hedgerows. Okay, great. So, these are some really fantastic projects. And I think Alpine County is so ripe for all these transformative opportunities. Small county, 4,000 people, really dedicated community. I think we have a fantastic network of resources with AWG, with the community, with Sub-Conservancy. And I think the pressures of Douglas County are really going to change significantly, as we know, already are changing. And I think keeping Alpine County, as special as it is, would be fantastic. And we look forward to, being a place where we can do exciting projects that will benefit the ranching community, because I think that's one of the key values that makes Alpine County so interesting. There's recreation. Ranching is a key cornerstone of life and quality of life in Alpine County. And so we are going to continue to explore that, and would love to have a forum to share that information. NRCS obviously, is fantastic in this, and it helps everyone in Alpine County and Douglas, et cetera. And I think there's so many other opportunities out there as well that we can blend together to make Alpine County fantastic.
I'd like to just give a plug to Simon. He's our in-house fence builder.
Yeah.
Off in the corner. And Jessica has helped us with some erosion control projects in the past. And they
And then the last thing I'd like to say is that I do think that, we are seeing things change. We've seen Alpine County change significantly just in the last year of fires. And, we may get some significant rains that may all go away, but it's not really looking like that's going to be the case. And if I think we can continue doing what we did in the past and sort of dig ourselves into a corner, or we can adjust our practices and think of how can we manage our resources such that we can still, ranch in a way that is going to work for us. And I think it's all about finding solutions to a changing world. The Healthy Soils grant was really interesting in terms of that. There are other things that help with pasture management and figuring out, how you can potentially rotationally graze to, to better, get roots to go deeper into the soil so that you can get more grass to grow with less irrigation availability. So I think there are a lot of resources out there that we would be wise to take advantage of, and we look forward to participating in those. I also think that there's some projects that we're starting to explore, and I know Andy has done this on his plate. I think you have. Looking at ecosystem services and looking at carbon analysis and getting credit for stuff that we're already doing. As more and more areas get depleted and we're doing the right thing, we might as well get a baseline of that now and figure out how we can either monetize that or, improve our practices such that these values keep increasing. So I think that there are a ton of opportunities out there, and I'm excited for Alpine County because I feel like we could really be a leader in this if we get our directions straight, and if you start showering before you get in the river.
It's either on this side or that side.
Anyway, so that's what we have to say about this.
We have about 3 minutes if anyone has any questions or comments.
Yes.
last question, is any of your ranch getting the water from South Lake Tahoe PV?
Yes,
And is that being affected, that comes to the northeastern part of your ranch? Is that
that's right. Yep. And that is in a different, that is in Wade Valley, so it is not connected to the.
That doesn't get into the river system.
Right, it doesn't get in the river system, but it does get by you guys to go down to.
We have a
further runs
conveyance
to
that runs.
Never, you're on that water as well, correct? On the South Lake Tahoe PV? Yeah, so it gets by you to them. I just want to, it becomes daylight by you guys going down that bridge, right?
That's right. And then it goes into a conveyance and goes actually across the river and comes out on the other side of the river.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, there is a hand raised.
Oh,
So sorry. It's Gary. Gary, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I heard him on mute.
Okay, we're gonna go to Rich real quick then, and then we'll go back to Gary. So Rich Hardy, if you had your question, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Rich Harvey again. And the previous speaker mentioned two benefits of ranching, and one of them was open space. And I think Valerie touched on the fact that all of this open space that's irrigated provided a tremendous fire protection for Alpine County that I don't think we appreciated in the past. I credit the ranch lands upwind of Markleyville for saving Markleyville, basically. The ranch lands in Hope Valley acted as a huge fire break along the West Carson. And again, in Diamond Valley, that open space, that moist irrigated soil actually decreased the surface area of the fire significantly. So I think that one of the benefits of ranching that we didn't appreciate, or maybe we did, but I hadn't thought of it, was how open space as a fire break. It was a tremendous asset to the county during the Tamarack fire. Just wanted to bring that up. I don't think people maybe thought about it in that way, but it's really valuable. It's really valuable to the county to have open space, irrigated ranch lands for that.
So glad you bring that up, and I wish that we had included some photographs, some really dramatic photographs, and maybe we can circulate them later on this. But we have photos of the Saturday when things got really intense of trees burning out in Harvey, coming down Harvey Lake, all of that burning, cattle on the field, and then the fire essentially, peters out right when it gets to the green grass, and the cattle are right there. It was really dramatic. Yeah, the whole Diamond, as far as we're concerned, the Diamond Valley green grass stopped the fire from coming to us.
Thanks, Rich.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, excellent point.
So I have no more hand raised, so we're gonna move on.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Keeping us on schedule. And now Jessica Gwerder with National Resources Conservation Service.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jessica Gwerder. I'm the district conservationist for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Our field office is located in Minden, Nevada. We are pretty unique in that we cross the state line. We do take care of the southern half of Washoe County, Carson City, and Douglas counties, but then we also take care of the northern half and of both Alpine and Mono counties, excuse me. Go ahead, next slide, please. So what do? We come to your property at your request. We're here to work with you to achieve your goals for the property, and we have specialists on hand that can help develop a conservation plan for you with different practices, whether that be structural or management practices to try and achieve that goal. So really, like I said, it all starts with you giving us a call. We are a voluntary program. We are non-regulatory. So we work on private lands. We can work on public lands. There are some little side notes to that, but it is a possibility. So give us a call. We'll come out, take a look at your property. We do have some engineering on staff, myself, and we have 2 planners on hand that have rangeland and some forestry background as well. So we can help develop a grazing plan for you. Next, please. We do have financial assistance too. So we can both provide technical assistance and then the financial assistance. The first step is getting started with the Farm Service Agency office. The office that covers this area is located in Yerington. However, our office can help facilitate some of that paperwork process. You would fill out a program application with us. And again, we're gonna help you through this because we're the federal government and we like our paperwork. We do have special initiatives for historically underserved producers. The 3 primary we have are limited resource, beginning farmer, and socially disadvantaged. And actually there is a 4th one that has to do with veteran farmers that are beginning farmers as well. But we'll work through with everything, look at definitions to see if you qualify for that, that historically underserved title. Go ahead, next, please. The biggest program that we have as far as implementing structural or doing management practices or even doing some vegetative practices is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP. This is probably our biggest overarching program. However, we do have others. So we do work with the landowner or the operator. So if you lease property, we can go ahead and work with you too. It just requires permission from the landowner. This also applies on those public lands. We can do cooperative contracts between 2 or more participants, but it needs to be, again, a special circumstance where we're trying to address a bigger issue across those property boundaries. Something that's newer too, is we can do contracts with water management entities as well. Next, please. Okay, so if you are awarded a contract and it's an if situation, you're not guaranteed a contract with us. You put in that application, we go ahead and go through and look at what resource concerns or problems we're trying to solve on the ground with what practices we're trying to use. If you're awarded a contract, the land is put under a contract for a period of time. Now that period of time is something we work with you on. We can have contracts up to 10 years. We prefer to keep those between 3 and 5 years, and I'll explain why in just a minute. But we work with you to schedule those practices so that it works for your budget, for your timeline. The last thing any of us want to do is put you in a pinch and have to make you get practices in the ground and maybe not have the financial means to do so. We can do waivers to start. However, we typically require that no part of that project is started until the contract is signed and an engineering design has been provided, cultural resources inspections have been done, all of that. But we can, again, work with you all throughout that. You must start the practice within 12 months of signing the contract. And we do have practice standards and specifications, which before you even sign a contract with us, we would go through those so that you have a better understanding of what you're getting yourself signed up for. Each of our practices does have a lifespan. It varies from practice to practice. So for example, some of our management practices, like prescribed grazing, is a 1-year lifespan because every year you may need to adapt and change your management for whatever the situation brings you. And then we do have operation and maintenance associated with our practices. Next, please. So this is what I was alluding to as far as trying to keep our contracts between 3 and 5 years. So we do pay on a flat rate situation. So an example, and I'm sure the digital world can't see this very well, but using fence as an example, we pay, in this case, it was $3.76 per foot. So the good side of that is before you enter a contract with us, you're going to know exactly what you will get from us and then be able to budget for that. We do have historically underserved rates, which tend to be higher rate. And then I do want to point out that our costs are not intended to pay 100% of the actual cost. So this cost list, as an example here, it's developed at a regional level. It's meant to include labor, materials, any operator time. That's how that price is created. Go ahead, next, please. Our payments are on a reimbursable basis. So that's why, I mean, we don't want to schedule a bunch of practices that you're not able to pay for up front, because once they're installed, then one of our specialists to come out, check out the practice, make sure it meets our standards and specifications, and then reimburse you. We can do assignments of payment that can go to a contractor or supplier, but that's at the request of the person under contract. And then all payments that you receive must be reported to the IRS, please. So I'm just going to go through a couple of example practices, but this is by no means an all-inclusive list. So fencing. This example here is an exclusion fence along the Carson River. We can do those. We can do cross fencing for prescribed grazing. Riparian pastures are also very common. There's a lot of different materials we can use. This one's a barbed wire fence. Depending on your livestock type, we can do woven wire. We do take wildlife standards into consideration when we give you those specifications for the fence. Next, please. Livestock watering facilities. We can help with spring developments, stock water wells. We can help with storage tanks, pipelines to convey the water, as well as the drinker troughs themselves. This is a really interesting one, and it's actually on BLM land. But as you can see over here, we have a nice wildlife escape ramp that is required in all of our troughs as well. Prescribed grazing. So like I mentioned, myself as well as 2 conservation planners in the office have a rangeland background. We are happy to work with you to help write a prescribed grazing plan that will suit your property, that will suit your goals and your needs. Grade stabilization. So this may look familiar for some people in the room. This was a channel that went right down into the Carson River. It was causing a huge amount of sediment erosion, that turbidity issue. We were able to work with the landowner. There's actually a geotextile fabric underneath this, reshaped it, added some nice rock, and as far as I know, it's working pretty well, and it was a beautiful project. Stream bank and shoreline protection. This was actually right after the 2017 flood. It took out this whole bank here. So we worked with the landowner as well as the conservation district, and we were able to do this bioengineered here. So this is a combination of willow mattresses, and then we have some willow wattles as well. There are some willow plugs that were put in for that vegetative reestablishment as well. We can do more structural type of stream bank and shoreline protection, but that then just jumps us into different kind of permits, which again, we're happy to work with you on to accommodate that. Irrigation improvements. I'm really glad this was brought up earlier, because this is something that maybe doesn't get thought up as much when you think water quality. Well, no, you're just going to spread water out on the ground. What is that going to do? It's going to improve your pasture condition. Improving pastures means less bare ground. It means better rotational grazing. So we can do different irrigation improvements. And that's probably one of our most commonly used practice in our area. Next. So tamarack fire is right on the back of our mind still. We can help with reseeding. That's a pretty obvious one there. And next. We can help with tree and shrub establishment as well. Something else, if you have land that perhaps did not burn, and it's starting to look pretty thick like this over here, we can help come in and do some thinning, pruning, as well as, if you'll do the next slide, please, as well as woody residue treatment to get rid of whatever we're removing, or if you just have a lot of understory brush that needs to be mulched, pile and burn, a lot of different options. And next, one more time. So I can take questions, and if you click one more time, I'll put all of my contact information as well as the list of people in our office. Any questions? Yes.
Is there a size of acreage that we need to have?
No. Nope. There is no minimum size.
So usually we work with agricultural producers. However, as we all know, in Alpine County, there's a lot of forest land. Non-industrial private forest land is an eligible land use too. So after the Tamarack fire, we are working with properties that are 5 acres or less. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just hoping for, there's a lot of ranches here. I was just hoping for a show of hands of folks that have already applied for EQIP funds or had experience with NRCS.
And that's a really good point. I'm glad you say that, because since we do tend to work on your private land, your work with us is something we do not share. That is your personal information. In a forum like this is a great example. I can't come up here and say, Valerie and Devere did this work with NRCS unless they tell me it's okay, or they come and advertise it themselves. Yes.
I'm just going to share one other thing, which is that, you mentioned we're working with, having conversations with NRCS, as Danny mentioned, or as I mentioned, down in Bishop as well. And you mentioned in terms of like how much the money and the pre-fund and the matching and all that sort of thing. So we view in that other project and here as well as, the EQIP funding being a great resource. Danny said something that I just wanted to emphasize, which is that, one of our goals in our plan is that the EPA will accept it as a 9-element watershed plan. And what that does is it makes the area eligible for competitive state funds that we get from the feds as well, 319 grants. And so that's, I know that there's no one single funding source that sort of fits all the holes that need to be filled. And so our hope is that that will, be a combination that can help. I understand CWSD also sometimes has funds that can be applied. They haven't been able to bring them as matching funds in California because we don't have a TMPL or a watershed plan. But I know that they've been using them on the Nevada side. So it's gonna, want to provide that perspective of our hope to, there is no silver bullet, which is why we're talking about roads and ranches and, recreation, et cetera. But there's also no silver bullet for addressing each of those, potential sources and cover everything. Sorry for stealing your moment.
No, you're great. You can come up here at
Yeah,
any
I was
point.
gonna say that's kind of a segue. So the end of this meeting was any more questions, any thoughts, ideas? I mean, I think that, I don't know if it completely came across the vision plan, to kind of making it up as they go along, because it's never been done before. And so they need the help of all of us to know what to put in it so we can make that measurable improvement. So.
Is that a job interview?
Yeah, I should have one question. This came up, Danny, when you gave me a presentation, there's some dots all cool, and you said our roadway de-icing compound the likely source of fluoride and sulfate in both valleys.
I would say are a likely source. Yeah, that's a good point, and that's definitely looking at. The water boards had a permit.
If anyone else has any questions or comments, this is kind of our wrap-up period, so if we want to foster, no more talking.
Valerie, did you pay her to say that?
This all by yourself.
Holy moly.
Yes, Devere.
I have something to say. I have been involved with agriculture and utilized Alpine County, my family before me. We were on lands that used to belong to indigenous people of this country, and when my family came here, we put them all to work, or they put us to work. Anyway, what I'd like to say is we want to be part of the solution, not the problem. And I think a lot of people in the ranching community and everybody else that uses the land want to be that as well. This is just a way to get everybody involved, and you need to see that work with Lahontan and these other groups, and they're not hard to work with. They're easy to work with. That's all.
That's not what they say about you.
It's fun to run screaming through the room. Anyway.
Ron?
Yeah, I'd like to find out more. In Hope Valley, we decided that it's maybe historical nitrates. Back in the day, in the 50s and 60s, there was easily 100,000 cows up there in that one valley for the summer. Okay. I was the main caretaker, so we can argue about that later. But the numbers that they tell me of those days, the arguments they tell me of those days, but that was the numbers that they were driving out of there in the 50s and 60s, all the way from the 1900s.
I was part of that. So.
Well, that was a little bit before your time.
No, well,
That's all cattle.
older than
You and I met before. We'll talk about that.
But it was a ball.
No, it's actually on the road.
Here's ranch feedlots, 6,000.
So if I get to my point, the historical nitrates that was dropped from that many cows back in the day, how do they measure that that has gone away? Or is it still putting out the pollutants on the river that they're measuring those nitrates? Or, and the question I come up with you guys is it now recreation? Because we have a lot of open camping in that area. We have a lot of nitrates on that river because of camping, especially in Faith Valley, where they're camping right on the river. So is there any way that we can measure the differences of where it got, how it got there and how long it's been there? And so we can eliminate the historical aspect or not?
That is a great question. Give me a month or so. So I can comment a little bit on that. First of all, I don't know where you're equating cattle to nitrates, because cattle don't pollute with nitrates. We're in Bridgeport Valley, so we've been working with Lahontan for the last 15 years, this same thing, and we're on the waiver now. And they first came at us with nitrates, and it ended up, they tested before it went into our irrigation systems, and then afterwards, and it actually cleaned up the nitrates. So that's when it went into the bacteria.
So that's my question.
The fecal coliforms.
They said it was historical, that's from the older cattle ranch.
Right.
Not me, I'm reporting what they said.
Right.
And this has been something that's been going on in an argument over the house for 40 years, and what caused these nitrate levels.
I read Lahontan's report one evening, and they even spoke about legume degradation, like degradation of legumes being a source of nitrogen, and some document I found on your website. So I've never heard of that before. I mean, it made sense. I mean, legumes put nitrogen back. I don't know. I've never heard of that. I called Kimberly and asked her. I don't know everything, obviously. I'm just a rancher. I just would think it's extremely interesting. Like we brought the de-icer, whoever brought that up.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting to look at those data sets, and maybe if you guys have it charted, and maybe you already have it in obviously a spreadsheet or some kind of spreadsheet got in a chart, break that out where we can see it by the month when this stuff is happening and where these outliers occur. Was it a drought? And then also if we can overlay a drought year on that, would be super interesting. And we can maybe get some ideas of what we need to be doing differently, maybe, and how we graze or where we graze. Because I think we can do some big improvement in what we're doing if we have a little idea of what we need to work with.
Yeah, so you're asking about the data, and one of your questions is like for at least for our listings, right? Where does that data come from? And until this 2018 report and this next one, most of our data came from samples that our ambient water monitoring team did. And they've been doing that since 2000-ish or so, but over on a quarterly basis for most of the locations, right? And there's pretty good. We're gonna have a bigger gap next quarter, but fortunately, that's how funding contracts go with labs. But so we don't have monthly data, but we do have quarterly data. And it can be overlaid with precip years. Another two comments on that. One is that we currently have a contract with the Aquatic Science Center associated with San Francisco Estuary Institute to look at our long-term data and seek out any trends or something. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. That's separate from this project, but it might provide some insight in that we can use probably after September, like when we're more into the management or step spaces. And then, the Lahontan Water Board's basin plan contains a lot of water quality objectives or standards that are site specific, and a lot of them, in full honesty, are tight, right? We have really high water quality, and even the water quality that exceeds our standards in a lot of our areas is better water quality than they have like in some other areas that are more impacted by whatever land use is. So one way of what I'm saying is that our problems aren't that bad, but I also think that we don't have that far to go to meet our standards either. So that's just some commentary on
In the quarterly, just traditional quarters, correct, from January on, not even, like January, February, March, and then April, May, June.
Yeah.
So that is actually like one management segment of our year.
Yeah.
And then, July, August, September is actually another management segment of our year with a little more low water, a little more stress on the ranch. So that could be super interesting.
Yeah.
To take a look at. And then identify the winters with the ISO or whatever.
Just to add to what Todd was saying about Bridgeport Valley, about the nitrates in the water. It was discovered that during the water quality study, started doing 15 years ongoing, they found that the nitrates were in the snowpack. Actually hiked up into the crags and took snow samples. Nitrates. And when you think that is coming up from the valley, from the pollution.
Yeah, that's right.
And then as Todd did say, as it irrigated to the meadows, the grass took the water going into the valley.
I'm not familiar with that study, but I mean, if that's the case, one thing to look at would be looking at our spring quarter samples, right? And if they are appreciably higher than the other quarters, that would show sort of a flush from the snow melt.
And on one side of the bridge to the other, so the flow. They did do sampling, it was pretty interesting.
I think the resource was Dr. Kenneth Tate with the Rangeline Water Quality.
We're all in the backs from the music.
Very good.
So back to the.
And Ron, we're gonna keep to our schedule, so you have 1 minute.
I get it. Going back to the Caltrans road, chain control protection, so people snow. When they're putting that on, they're putting it on during the storm, right before the storm and after it. And then when they go by with the blower, they're blowing it at least 150 feet upfield of the road, downhill of the road. So it spreads beyond the area right next to the road. But as you drive up the road, like today, we drove up the valley really fast, and you can see where the fire burned up trees, and you can see where the road killed those trees. The chemicals that are putting on it. And the chemical of Caltrans has changed over the years. So is that changing it as well? Because we're getting this annual kill next to the road, but we're not getting the kill that we used to get further away from the road. That's from my observation.
Your observations are a little bit more detailed than mine. I can't speculate on them. I'm sorry. You're right.
It goes back to this point that you're only measuring it in a certain time, so you're not going to be able to capture that unless you're doing it in more time than that.
We're doing the best we can with the data we have. But you're right with your observations in terms of their practices have been changing. And I think that you heard at one of maybe the first of these meetings, the report on just like road crossings. And that was mostly, I think, associated with erosion and that sort of stuff. But I think it also did a mapping of all the crossings in different waterways and each those crossings is an opportunity for, Danny, myself, and everybody stood underneath one of the main bridges in Hope Valley to just talk about this project in general, and every time the car went by, it was after that first snow, like, what was that, October or something, and we got 2 or 3 feet instead of 3 inches, and every time a vehicle went by, there's a splash. So, I don't have all the answers, but if you bring some good points.
So.
No.
If you did have suggestions.
I did have one last thing from Mo. The Bridgeport grazing presentation was brought up earlier. If anyone is interested in information, it's tomorrow at 9 a.m. Mo sent it to me, so if you're interested in learning more about that, I just pass that information along. Other than that, Kimra?
Yeah, I just.
would say about Bridgeport, that is very different water quality situation there, so it's not necessarily.
I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. We are your watershed group, so if you didn't sign in or you have ideas now about what you want us to be doing or ideas for Danny and the regional board, please contact me, contact Danny, and stay in touch and let us know how we can do better. And upcoming events at the bottom of the agenda will be back hopefully here on May 10th. I don't have a topic yet, but that will be our next watershed group meeting. The Markleyville Public Projects Forum, there's 5 projects going in the next year and forward, and there's going to be a public open house at County Administration on Wednesday, March 30th. At 1 p.m. there's a walk about biking and walking around town and how those paths can be better. And then at 4 p.m. we'll have booths at County Admin, and that's going to be on the Hot Springs Road Project, the Hot Springs Bridge Project, the Markleyville Public Utility District Sewer Project at Markleyville Creek, the Caltrans Bridge Replacement Project at Markleyville Creek, and finally the long-awaited Markleyville Creek Restoration Project to take the flood wall off and reconnect Markleyville Creek with the floodplain. So March 30th, 4 p.m., please come out. And then Carson River Watershed Forum is coming up on March 29th and March 30th. In Carson City. So if you're not tapped into that, contact me. There'll be presenters both about California and Nevada side of the watershed. I think that Wash Your Earth Day, Wash Your Environmental Protection Department just announced they are doing a Wash Your Earth Day this year, and that will be on Saturday, May 7th, 10 to 2 at the Stewart Community Center, and everyone's invited. There'll be booths, there'll be activities. I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you all for coming out. Like Cameron said, we really want to grow our community and our reach. And so having these conversations are one of the ways we're able to do that and learn from you guys. So thank you for participating.